Oh, hey guys, my name is James and I'm with Tamao and Alex, and today we're going to be looking at a Roaring Skies preview. So, take it away. What's going to be good in the new set?
Well, I guess we'll go over each card individually and analyze them, see how we could use them potentially, and we'll jump straight into that with Shedinja,
Nice.
which is a stage 1 30 HP Pokemon, which is pretty shocking. But it does have a pretty cool attack, and Pokemon seem to print Pokemon cards like this once in a while. You get this with Night March, you get this with Tall Drop. They seem to want to make some random cheap card that will be good. Beginners can pick up and play, and this is going to be the card for the set, I think. For one colourless energy, you can do 50 times the number of damage counters on this Pokemon. So initially you're looking at this card and thinking, it's got 30 HP, it's going to be pretty shocking. And you could be right, but I think this card has potential. You could combine it with Mew EX, which has the ability to be able to copy any Pokemon's attack, and with Versatile, and it also has a lot more HP, so you could be looking at a very strong attacker there.
Because its pre-evolution has actually got more HP than it has.
It certainly does, it has 40 HP, so you've got to be careful when you use the card. If you ever have 30 HP on your Nincada, then definitely do not evolve it into into this Pokemon card, because you're going to be giving away a prize just like that.
That would be amazing. Alex, what are your thoughts on that card?
I mean, the opportunities to use it with Mew EX and Dimensional Valley for no energy is quite something, or even using it with stuff like Frozen City or Rainbow Energy, putting the 10 damage on Mew itself to be able to do 150, 200 damage. It's got great potential. Whether we'll actually see any competitive play we'll soon see, I guess, once the set actually does release.
One thing I will say with this card is, if there is a rotation and Mew does get rotated, I can see it not being that great a card. I think Mew is the thing carrying it right now, and without Mew you're going to have a lot of HP buffers in your deck in order to make it viable, which there are things that help you out with that, but it's going to be an awkward card to use without Mew.
Okay, right, well, let's see what we've got next.
So the next card we have, I'm not too sure how great this card's going to be, but it's got an ability, and any Pokemon with an ability is going to be quite interesting. So this is Banette. It's a stage 1 and has the ability which basically negates all tools in play. It doesn't stop you actually playing them, but say you have a Headringer on your Virizion or your Genesect, which is a common issue with that deck, it just negates it, and means you can attack for 3 energy of Genesect or 2 energy of Virizion. So, I mean, it's not the best card, and I don't think it will see much play, but I thought it was interesting, so I thought it was worth including.
So this negates every tool in play, or just your opponents?
So just both you and your opponents.
So you've got to time it right, a bit like
Absolutely.
with Headringers and Megaphone.
Yes.
Interesting. Alex, what do you reckon?
I mean, you'd probably would find it quite hard to find a space to include a 1/1 line of such a tech. I mean, it is a niche use for flare tools, and there's no really any point in using it for your opponent's tools either. I mean, if you really want to negate a G booster, you've got Spiritomb, which is a basic Pokemon you can easily put down.
I think as the format shifts towards Mega Pokemon, it will be quite helpful in being able to just negate the Spirit Links quite a lot, because I think Mega decks right now do fully rely on these Spirit Links. I can't imagine playing a Mega deck without one now. So there could be potential for this, but I don't think in this current format it's quick enough or impactful enough to make a dent right now.
Any deck that spring to mind that just don't really need item cards, and so you could have one of these in?
I mean, tools are so prevalent right now that almost every deck would require a tool. So for now, maybe not, but you never know what could come out in the future.
Sorry, Alex.
I mean, yeah, going back to the point about the Mega Pokemon and the Spirit Links, we'll see with a card which we'll be going through shortly. The Spirit Links, in my opinion, might not be as necessary as many people think. So for me personally, this Banette doesn't actually do too much currently. Maybe not even the next format either. But I guess we'll soon see. Someone with a bit of creativity could put this into work. Maybe it works pretty well.
Okay, right. Next up,
It's Vinette. It's another Vinette, and the only reason I actually included it was because I pulled this in my pre-release, and I played it in my pre-release, won one line, and it was insane. Like, I'll go through the card now. It has a Delta Evolution, which is the only reason I think it's even any good. The Delta Evolution means you can evolve it from Shuffit on the turn that you played Shuffit down, which is incredibly strong. Turn 1, whatever you want to do, evolve it. And for 1 Psychic Energy, 20 damage, and you stop your Pokemon from evolving any of their Pokemon. We've had cards similar to this before with stuff like B-Cancel and an old Spiritomb, but nothing that universally stops all of your opponent's Pokemon from evolving. And that's huge in a format where Mega Evolution is key right now, I think. So, no, I do not think this card is amazing right now, but this could be like the new Executor, the new lock deck. When there's a kind of rotation, format might slow down a bit. 20 damage isn't great, that's the only issue. You'll have Muscle Band to pump out a bit more extra damage, but I actually do think this card is interesting, and it can definitely slow your opponent down for 1 Psychic Energy. Its second attack just puts 5 damage counters on. It's pretty useless. I think you never want to stop using the first attack if you're going for that strategy. But I can see it as an interesting tech, definitely.
I mean, we're going to see with some of the other cards that this set is particularly directed towards the advancement of evolution.
Absolutely.
And I think we might find cards in XY base set even beforehand, but we're kind of guessing that Black and White's going to get dropped. But these XY Pokemon that are going to suddenly become really valuable because turn 2 you can have Outer Dragonite or this kind of thing. So it's quite interesting that they've thrown this out as a counter.
Absolutely.
So it'd be interesting to see what way the meta rolls. Okay, right, let's move on.
Okay, so we're on to Deoxys now, which is a basic Pokemon with 110 HP, so it's already got semi-decent stats. For 1 Colourless, so with Dimensional Valley, for no energy at all, you can draw 2 cards, but importantly you can draw them on the first turn. So even if you go first and you have the drawback of not being able to attack first turn, you'll be able to use this attack, which is great, but it's only an effect which will ever work if you go first. So 50% of the time, only if you start.
Every time.
Yeah, absolutely. Second attack, we're looking at 30 damage base, but if you use it again the next turn, so you don't get gusted out or anything, actually goes up to 90, which is a lot of damage for 1 energy with a Dimensional Valley in play.
Yeah, that's quite true. Does that tempt you in any way, Alex?
I mean, it's one of the first few Pokemon since I've started playing that you can actually use on the first turn to actually attack. This and another coming card we're going to look at shortly. As Tamao said, it's going to work 50% of the time. Even if you lose game 1 going second, do you really want to be drawing maybe 2 cards when you turn 2? You're going a bit quicker. I don't see anyone particularly using this card too much value right now.
It does have the potential for some slightly higher HP one-hit KOs to get again. Obviously, we're seeing with Executor, Verbank, Laser, but now maybe there's a couple more starting Pokemon that's effectively dangerous to start with.
Yeah.
Not that this will get a great deal of play, but if it does, that would be quite funny.
I mean, it's tanky enough with 110 HP, but there's plenty of Pokemon which are Psychic now, and it still being Psychic weak, for example, still has its drawbacks. There's still too many Psychic Pokemon out there that can really hit it quite strongly very quickly. But like I said, we'll see. It does 30, it can do 90. A turn 2, well, turn 3 90, I guess. So it's small amounts of potential, but 2 stars.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just a bit too slow for my liking. But it's an interesting card. It's an interesting mechanic in general.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, being able to use an attack the first turn, and potentially without any energies attached to it. So you could build up a bench.
Tell me about Absol.
Alright, so Absol is actually probably one of my favourite cards from the set because just the ability is so interesting. So it's just a basic of 100 HP. This ability lets you move 3 damage counters from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another. And I feel like damage manipulation is so important in this game. And there's a lot of times where there's so many out of reach KOs that this will help bring into, just make everything a lot easier, I think. My only issue with it right now is bench space. A lot of decks that would be able to utilise a card like this will just not have the bench space. So stuff like Landorus at the moment, like it's always going to be filled with bats and maybe Lucarias and other stuff like that. So that's the only issue I see for it right now. It's just not impactful enough to justify having a bench space dedicated to that one-time use of being able to move 3 damage counters. But like, how many times have you been like literally 30 damage? Something on the bench is 30 damage away from being knocked out. You just can't touch it with anything. You've used all your Lysanders and everything like that. It's great for that little bit extra reach that you wouldn't be able to get normally. A little bit of extra reach to let you get the one-hit KOs mid-game, late game. I think it's a strong card.
Is this a replacement for Dusknoir? Could it be paired with it, or...?
I wouldn't pair it with Dusknoir because Dusknoir is just a stronger form of this card. You'd never ever use Absol once you had the Dusknoir out, so it seems like a dead card. But
it is a basic, though.
It is a basic. But I think if you're playing Dusknoir, you have to dedicate your deck to getting the Dusknoir out. As Absol requires a lot less dedication. So I think decks will be able to splash this card in, maybe as a 2-of in some decks. But I don't know quite yet what deck this would be able to be utilised in. If it had an attack that was relevant, then maybe you'd see it in a dark deck, but unfortunately it only does 30 and goes through resistance, which is poor, to be honest. So you'd only be using it for its effect.
Alex, yay or nay on the Absol?
I'm a bit in the middle right now, thinking about this card. For me, for it to be well used, you're going to have to use it in a deck which probably has scoop ups to pick things up again. So then you'll probably be playing a Golbat or a Crobat deck, which you'd probably rather be scooping them up. Sort of hit and miss for me at the moment. Again, it probably has its niche users. It'll be fun to use. I mean, yeah, those times where you are 2-3 damage counters away from taking an EX kill on a bench, say as a Jirachi on a bench, for example, I can see it being used, but again, it's not doing enough currently.
Okay, we've seen a lot of decks utilising tasting, but it's all about the kiss in this new set.
Oh God, James. So I'm about to tell you this next. It's a tank basically for a stage 2 Pokemon with 150 HP, but it also has a Delta Evolution trait, which we talked about earlier, and it's a fantastic trait to have for any evolved Pokemon. Unfortunately, it's not as easy to get out as Banette was earlier because it is a stage 2, so you'd have to, like, we'll talk about Wally later, but you'd have to Wally into a Togetic from a Togepi and then evolve into a Togekiss. So it's awkward, but it should be able to get going by turn 2-ish. Its ability lets you look at the top 8 cards and choose any basic energy there and attach it to any of your Pokemon as you like, which is nuts. As an ability goes, that's an amazing ability, and it's just a shame that it's on a stage 2. So, amazing ability, but I don't think it'll see too much play just because it's going to be quite awkward to get out, and you'd have to dedicate a lot of space to an engine to be able to use that.
I'm just going to throw this out there. Togekiss, Celestial Roar, Rayquaza.
Celestial Roar, Rayquaza.
Yeah.
Oh, well...
You know, obviously, you're not going to use the Celestial Roar, but that particular Rayquaza...
For an expanded format. I mean, getting us...
It's been a long time.
Togekiss, 7 energies onto it, and then boom.
Yeah, I mean, I think that card makes you have to discard all the energies on Pokemon, so it might be a bit of a shame to.
The problems, you'll probably end up with 3 lightning and 3 fires, James, and then what are you gonna do? Oh boy.
I'm going to be fire heavy in that deck.
Yeah.
What do you reckon, Alex, on Togekiss?
Yeah, I think I have to agree. The ability is brilliant. Obviously the problem is being you're gonna have to have a Togetic and the Togekiss in hand or volleying into it, which is a bit difficult. The only other thing is a lot of decks right now seem to be going very special energy based. There's less decks now that tend to be just basic energy. I mean, obviously if you got fairies, which you probably wouldn't play this anyway because you have Xerneas bringing energy onto the board. So it's sort of hit and miss, but the ability is really good. I mean, it'll take a lot of creativity to build a deck with it. You've got maybe Huntail, similar to what Ho-Oh's done in expanded formats, so Togekiss can have something similar. It's there to be seen, I guess.
What I will say about the card is it's very similar to a card that was a very good card like 7 or 8 years ago. I think it was also a Togekiss back then, but there was a card that basically did the same thing but with 10 cards back then and allowed you to attach all the energies then, and it was a very good deck. Same thing with Absol actually as well. There used to be an Absol EX which put down, you can move 3 damage counters, and it was in, I'm pretty sure it was in the Worlds deck that won. So there's all these cards that have been previously released and were very good back then. We just need to see if they'll be any good right now.
Yeah, which is, it's interesting for myself and James, considering we probably weren't playing that far ago or that long ago. So it's nice to see these different mechanics coming in.
Yeah, and I think it's a general thing you'll see with these recent sets actually, that a lot of the Pokemon are getting older traits of cards. And I think it's quite a good step. It's a good step in the right direction because it was a much more enjoyable format back then, and I think that Pokemon are just trying to recreate it. I think it's interesting that they're doing that.
I'm just really looking forward to being able to Wally and Delta in one turn. That's just going to be so satisfying when you pull that off.
In before Broken Time Space is reprinted.
Yeah.
What's up next?
So next we have Reshiram, which 130 HP basic dragon type, and has a very interesting ability, much like a Celebi X, Celebi Prime we saw previously. It allows you, as long as it's active, to attach a fire Pokemon to any one of your dragon Pokemon, which is great, as any energy acceleration is appreciated, and Dragon already has a card we'll see later called Double Dragon Energy. So Dragon's going to have a lot of energy acceleration if you choose to build your decks this way. It also has an attack, Fire, Lightning, Colourless, which is a horrible attack cost, but with Double Dragon Energy it's a bit more manageable. Only does 110 and you have to discard a fire with it, so it's a pretty poor attack, but I think the ability redeems it. If it's going to see any play at all, it's definitely going to be with the Dragon Mega Rayquaza EX, which we'll again see later. It does 300 damage, so it's pretty much knocking anything out, but it requires 5 energies. With Reshirams and Double Dragon Energy, you can power that up quite quickly. I think the interesting thing you can do, I'm pretty sure this works, but you can accelerate an energy once, switch to another Reshiram, and accelerate and then another energy again. So you could potentially get like 5 energies in one turn if you really wanted to. So I think I actually think this is a really good card. That's and cool. It's very underrated.
Let's move on to the next one.
Sure. Which is Salamence, a stage 2 160 HP dragon, which would benefit a lot from Rayquaza because its attacks costs do take fire. Only 1 energy for the first attack, so you probably won't need it for that, but it does 60 damage for 1 energy, which is great. Discard a stadium in play, which is also quite good because it's a very stadium heavy meta right now. There are very good stadiums, so it's a pretty interesting attack. It's a shame this is a stage 2 because three attacks on 1 Pokemon is rare. Like, we have it with Lucario EX, but we don't really have it of anything else. We haven't seen it in a long time, since I think Tyranitar before this, so it's just a shame that it won't see as much play just because it's a stage 2, but in general 3 attacks on a Pokemon is fantastic. It's great to have. Second attack takes a water and 2 colourless, which is very awkward if you're using fire energy, and it does 20 times the number of cards in your opponent's hand, so you probably won't be using this attack much whatsoever. I think it's outclassed by its first attack in terms of efficiency. 1 energy for 60. There's 20 times the number of cards in your opponent's hand. They can play around this quite easily, I think. But its third attack, they definitely can't play around because it just does a flat 170 damage, and you discard 3 energies. So that's knocking out most EXs. Muscle Band, it will knock out all EXs apart from like the Waylord. And yeah, and you're 2-shotting Mega EXs with a combination of the first attack and third attack. So it's interesting. Maybe if this format slows down a bit more after a rotation, you could see something good happening. But the fact that Seismitoad blocks off your rare candy is absolutely crippling for a deck like this. So maybe Evolution's not something to try out yet, but maybe later once Seismitoad dies down a bit, hopefully.
Which we all hope it does.
Well, with the
except for those that go on to have
except for
regional winning success.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I mean, as a stage 2, I can't see any stage 2s coming back into the format at the moment. In my honest opinion, I mean, you've got Rayquaza as well, which is quite a quick deck, and generally things like that can utilize stuff like Shaman, which will go on later. But
I agree, not right now. But I think the main limiting factor of stage 2 decks has always been rare candy. I think there's been strong stage 2 Pokemon, but the fact that rare candy gets shut down by Seismitoad is huge, and I think that's the only real limiting factor of stage 2 right now. And once, like, Seismitoad will not be as popular if Hypnotoxic Laser goes and Burbank City Gym goes, because your damage output will be like nullified beyond belief. So
see, I almost feel like Wally and the Delta were almost like a response to just how crippling Toad has been.
Yeah, I think Pokemon should notice that there's basically no evolution in the format right now, apart from like very, very like supporty Pokemon. There's nothing. You're never going to attack with a stage 2 in this format. So
unless your name's Luke Kirkham.
Well, we won't talk about him.
Tell us about the next card.
So we'll go on to one of the hype cards now. It's Altaria. It's a 90 HP for a stage 1. It's average. Well, it's not average, it's pretty poor actually, but it's got the Delta Evolution that we talked about. It's amazing on this Pokemon because it has a ridiculous ability which negates all weaknesses on your colourless Pokemon, which is interesting because colourless has always been, well, not always, but recently been a type that never hit anything for weakness. Back in the day when Dragon Pokemon were colourless Pokemon hit colourless Pokemon for weakness. But right now, colourless Pokemon doesn't hit anything for weakness, but colourless Pokemon have weaknesses. So it's been a bit unfair for colourless Pokemon, and this negates it almost. It's incredibly strong how quickly you can get this out with support from a support card, Winona. You can get 3 colourless Pokemon, get the Swablu, Altaria, and whatever colourless Pokemon you want to attack with, and you get it out just like that. It's ridiculous. But the one thing I would say is the niche with colourless Pokemon is that they're techable. They attack with any energy cost, any energy requirement. They can use double colourless energy. That was always been their strong point. I don't think they needed something like this, because I think they're going to have to be very careful with what colourless Pokemon they print in the future, especially with all the support that colourless Pokemon got in this set. So I think it's an interesting card. I don't think it's great for the format. I think colourless Pokemon will be very dominant because of this.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, you were saying that with the double colourless being so popular that that might actually go against itself, the double colourless energy.
Yeah, so just a lot of decks being able to play sort of most special energies now. And as Tamao said, I mean, I personally like this card. I mean, a lot of people tend to sort of immediately put it together with stuff like Rayquaza, and then there'll be this cycle of like lightning Pokemon being played or Garbodor being played. But you can always put it together with other stuff. I mean, there is another colourless Mega which Tamao actually used to quite good effect. Mega Kangaskhan. It's always going to be tanky. Can Rayquaza one hit a Kangaskhan?
Not the way I built my deck, no.
uh, yeah, so I mean, there'll be stuff like that negates its fighting weakness, and we know there's a lot of fighting support out there as well. So it seems like it could potentially fit in not just with Rayquaza as well. So it gives it a little bit more variability. So you can use it to tech it up with other things. I quite like it. I mean, I don't like the fact it has Delta Evolution with such a strong ability, which makes it almost a little bit broken. But it's an important card. We'll see a lot of it. I think a lot of people will immediately put it together with Rayquaza.
Be a lot of electric Pokemon out because of that, and there is some electric in this format.
See, that's my issue with the card. Like, you have formats. Basically, you have counters to decks, and those counters are usually determined by the weakness. And now you can't even really counter Rayquaza or any deck with colorless Pokemon right now. You can't counter them just by going for their weakness. You can't really tech for your Rayquaza matchup by splashing a Lightning Pokemon in your deck, because they're going to be running a 2/2 Altaria line in their deck. So, and they're going to be getting that out very quickly. So unless you have a Garbodor, which is a lot slower than Altaria, it's no Delta Evolution, and you need a tool on it, and is countered by Megaphone. Yeah, I just don't see any way of really countering colorless Pokemon right now. I think you just have to kind of knock on their door for ages and hope they don't hit Super Scoop Ups and Max Potions and stuff like that. Or it just kind of leads to a format where you need to be playing Pokemon that can do like 220 damage in one hit to knock out a Rayquaza. And that's not something I really like. I quite like interactions based on small amounts of damage every turn, and the longer the match goes, the more turns there are, the more chances there are for you to outplay your opponent, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't like the format is going into a situation where you need to be doing ridiculous amounts of damage in one go in order to be able to beat other decks.
I think to have some kind of anti-mega kind of mechanic in future sets, really, to...
Or just in general, more anti-EX cards, like just to make other Pokemon more viable.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's maybe in a way what they've been doing with this evolution acceleration.
Yeah, it's been great that there's been that, but they also gave that to an EX, a Mega EX, so that kind of nullifies.
Pretty important one too. So
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on.
Thunderous EX next. We've had formats dominated by Thunderous EX before, so when we heard there was going to be a Thunderous EX, we were excited.
Pretty excited.
Yeah, hopefully it would. Obviously, we knew what Rayquaza EX did at the time, and we were like, okay, Thunderous EX is coming out in the same set. Hopefully, it'll be good. And then we found out what it did, and it's probably not going to get any play whatsoever in any top tier decks, I'm afraid.
It's a shame.
Yeah, it is a shame, because we've had Thunderous for so long, and we've just known it to be quite a good Pokemon. But why would you use this Thunderous over the other Thunderous? It doesn't.
I think the first attack's really fun. Well, actually, maybe because I saw it in a pre-release, but
it's interesting. So it does 30 base damage, and you flip a coin, and depending on the outcome, you either do 30 more damage or paralyze. And obviously, paralyze is the strongest status right now. If you can permanently lock your opponent into paralysis, you probably win the game unless they are a Virizion EX. So it's interesting, but I just think its second attack is very, very poor. 3 lightning energy to do 150 is great. I mean, you're killing most EXs with a muscle band on it, but you do 50 damage to yourself, so you're basically making yourself like a Reshiram almost. Like, you're giving away 2 prizes for 120 HP, so it's frail, definitely, and the power that it packs just like, it's the same reason that I think it was a White Kyurem or something similar, or something did like 50 damage to itself and was just unplayable, maybe a Reshiram EX. So I just don't think it will see any play on whatsoever, I'm afraid.
Probably thumbs down for that one then. Watch someone win a regional with it and then loop our commentary over and over.
We'll have egg on our faces.
well, when Virizion and Keldeo both get rotated, stranger things have happened, right? Just constantly paralyze things. Or hope to.
Gallade.
Gallade EX is a card I haven't actually looked too much into. When we're analysing a card like Gallade EX, we're going to have to analyse the Mega at the same time, because I don't think you'd ever use Gallade EX on a deck on itself. So Galio DX on its own is 170 HP basic psychic Pokemon, so you can use D-Valley with it, which is always good. Its first attack just does 30 and pushes. You have the option to push your Pokemon away, opponent's Pokemon away, which is pretty weak. Its second attack for 3 psychic, so you can't even use Dimensional Valley with this, does 50 plus 20 for the number of prizes you still have left. So you're doing 170 for 3 psychic energy if you haven't taken any prizes, which isn't great really. 3 psychic energy is quite hard to put onto a Pokemon at any point in the game, and especially if you're not always going to be doing 170 damage with it. We see Pokemon can do 3 energy for 170 damage already. So
What about the Mega then?
so we'll go on to the Mega, because that's where the interesting part of this card comes. So for 2 psychic and a colourless, 2 psychic with a Dimensional Valley, you do 110 and 30 to all of your opponent's bench Pokemon that have damage counters on it already. So we're looking at a spread deck basically. I think some people are going to think this is really good, and some people are going to think it's really bad. I think it's somewhere in the middle personally. People play it. You have to combine it. There's a whole load of ways you can get the damage counter on your opponent's bench Pokemon. There's Fortress right now. There's new, I believe the Team Magma Stadium. Whenever you put a Pokemon down, put 2 damage counters on it. That's another way of doing it. There's the whole Crobat line, which I think is probably the best way of doing it. Golbat has an attack for colourless energy, which Supercross, 10 damage to everything. So that's probably the best way to play it right now. But I won't be testing this card personally, but I know people that will be. Luke Kirkham will be, I'm pretty sure. He seems to think this card is really good, and I'll be happy if he can beat me with it, because at the moment I don't rate it, but we'll have to see.
And for you, Alex, what do you reckon?
I'm not a fan. I mean, there's other decks right now which are probably just a lot better at hitting the bench for 30 damage. For example, you've got Primal Kyogre, which is doing 150, and it has its Delta ability. Is it Delta ability? I don't even know which one it is.
Alpha Growth.
Alpha Growth, that's the one. Yeah, so it's pretty much similar to how it has with Dimensional Valley. Doing 150 instead of 110, 30 to EXs. It's hard to say that you're probably easier to hit EXs than having to put 10 damage on things first. So it's lacking in something. Yeah, we'll see Luke Kirkham build some sort of weird, strange rogue deck with it. Loads of Wobbuffets, I don't know, any psychic Pokemon he could put together. Yeah, no, not for me. It's a disappointing Mega EX, as it were.
I agree that it gets fully outclassed by Kyogre. I mean, they fill different niches, but I think Kyogre just does it better. I agree with you there.
Latios CX.
Latios EX. This is another Pokemon where the base Pokemon's interesting, but we're mainly going to be talking about the Mega. But yeah, we see this ability again on another Pokemon where you get to attack turn 1 if you want to. If you get to go first, that 50% chance again. So there's 40 for 1 energy, which is good on turn 1, I guess. It's not game changing, but I actually think it synergizes with the Mega's attack quite well, which we'll go into now. Is 120 snipe damage, but you have to discard 2 energies, and it takes a water psychic colourless energy requirement, which is awkward as anything to power up. But we have Double Dragon energy at the moment. We also have Reshiram potential support. I don't know if the combo is very good, but
Mega Turbo.
You also have Mega Turbo, which is a very relevant card in a deck like this. So 120 snipe in this format, or you can do it to the active, which is quite good with the initial 40 damage. Kind of good. You can set stuff up, but 120 snipe kills Shaman EX, which is it's gonna be the main target, because talk about Shaman EX in great depth, I imagine, later on, but it's going to be in every deck, or any deck that doesn't run something like Wobbuffet or Silent Lab, so it can take a cheap 2 prize turn and pump out another attack next turn, because Double Dragon is a thing, and Mega Turbo, as Alex said. So I think it's got potential, but it's still quite weak.
Let's talk about one of the versions of the big guy.
Yes, Rayquaza EX. This is the Dragon Rayquaza EX. And I think if... We'll talk about the Megas later, but if we're going to evaluate a card like this, we also have to compare it to the other Rayquaza that is available, which is a colourless type, but this just doesn't offer as much as the colourless for me. Like, you can use it either to evolve into either of the Megas, so it doesn't matter which one you use. I feel like the only benefit you have to the Dragon Rayquaza EX is that it has support with Reshiram. Like, it has the Dragon support, it has the double Dragon energy, it has Reshiram to accelerate onto it, it has like the free retreat, 2 less retreat with a Hydreigon EX in play if you have a stadium as well. Other than that, the attacks are subpar. 2 energy for 30 is quite weak, and you need 4 energies to even do 100. And we'll see with the other Rayquaza EX that it's generally outclassed, I think. But we'll go on to the Dragon Mega Rayquaza EX, which I think is hugely underrated. I think has actually got quite a lot of potential. So we're looking at... This trait is quite interesting. Well, it's not interesting. It's just like an extra set of resistances, which is cool, because if Pokemon are having to attack you multiple times, then you're actually negating like 40-60 damage over the course of its lifespan. But yeah, it's not as interesting as the other trait the other Mega Rayquaza has. But it's Dragon type, so obviously Reshiram synergy. And it has a 5 energy attack cost, Fire, Lightning, Colourless, for 300 damage, and you have to discard a couple of energies with that as well. So, yeah, you're knocking anything out. You could win in 3 turns with this. There's a lot of damage. I think it's strong. It can get powered up a lot quicker than I think people realise. I think it might catch people off guard at Nationals and Worlds. We'll have to see.
For me, if you're going to be putting 5 energies on a Pokemon, it's going to be Wailord. So, it's just stronger. Hydreigon.
So yeah, we talked a bit about Hydreigon. It's another Dragon type in the set. They've gone all out on the Dragons and colourless Pokemon, but it's not that great. It's got an ability which is kind of cool. It's throwback to Darkrai, I guess. If you have a stadium play, your Dragon type Pokemon have 2 less retreat. So you will only be using it for its ability, because its attack is... We've seen it, it's basically Shred on other Pokemon. It just negates any effects on your opponent's Pokemon, which has come in handy, but yeah, it's only really against stuff like Suicune and Sigilyph, and that doesn't even one-hit KO them because it's only 80 damage, so you need a Muscle Band with that as well.
So potentially we're just seeing a card kind of printed to replace the set rotation, possibly.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the general theme of cards coming out soon, I think.
Okay, right, well, we're going to soldier on to the other basic...
The big boy of the set.
Yeah.
Well, the baby of the big boy of the set is the colourless Rayquaza EX. So we talked about the other Rayquaza EX earlier, the Dragon one, and how I thought this was just a lot stronger if you're going to be using a Rayquaza based deck. So
yeah.
For 1 energy, it does 10 damage, but plus 50 if your opponent's Pokemon is an EX. I think that's actually going to be very, very good, because one of the ways you can counter Rayquaza maybe is a Seismitoad to lock them out of trainers, lock them out of a lot of their deck, and 1 energy for 60, you can't continuously crush and hammer that. Like, they can just attach an energy every turn and do the damage every turn, and you'll be 3-hit in a Seismitoad EX. So I think it's interesting. I think it'll be a very good attack on your first available attack in turn if you can't get a Mega Rayquaza out. And its second attack is probably never going to be used. It's just 100. Well, not never, but you wouldn't want to use it. It's 100 and you have to discard the top 3 of your deck. So
basically when all your Megas are prized.
And that's a Hail Mary, yeah. You just hope for the best.
Alex, are you pro Dragon or pro colourless in the basic?
I think a hell of a lot more people will be playing the colourless one. It seems a lot more straightforward. The Dragon one has a lot more creativity to it, in my opinion. Being able to fit in different dragons, you've got a double dragon energy. The 300 damage is cool. I mean, we've seen an almost identical card before with Mega Charizard.
Yeah.
Same HP, same damage output. Doesn't have, I don't know, Delta Wild, is it? With the extra resistance. But I mean, by having a lot more support now through all the double energies, the Reshiram's, hitting for 300, nothing can really stop that. I mean, we had a format which was Blastoise with Black Ballista hitting for 200 consistently. Now imagine being able to do 300. Nothing could really handle it. The colorless one, there's not really much to say. There's everyone's hyping it up now. It is the hype deck for this set, potentially for nationals coming up, potentially for worlds coming up. It's down to getting the right list, I guess.
Do you think anyone might venture a completely mixed deck of both basics, both megas?
I think you'd be nuts to do that.
Yeah.
I think I just don't think we've. Okay, we'll talk about the Mega Rayquaza. We'll quickly just go over it. It's 220 HP and it does 30 times for free energy, free colorless energy, which is great. There's 30 times the number of bench Pokemon you have. We've seen attacks like this with Raichu, obviously. Circle Circuit. This is going to be amplified by the fact that you compare it with Skyfield Stadium.
Skyfield Stadium.
Yeah. And that allows you to get up to 8, which lets you hit for 30 times 8, which is 240, knocking out anything other than Wailord. Favorite.
Yeah.
And don't even forget it's got Delta Evolution as well.
That's the big thing right
Which
now. So you could potentially get this going turn 1, which I think is insane. You could slap a Spirit Link on a Rayquaza, evolve it that turn, get an energy in his discard, Mega Turbo it, onto the Mega Rayquaza, attach a double colourless energy, fill your bench with whatever you want and go to town already on turn 1. And that's not something that I'm looking forward to staring down the barrel of, because whilst you do have to get lucky to get that, it's not going to be unheard of just because of how much draw support we're going to have with Shaymin EX coming out. So, not looking forward to this card dominating the format, but it's going to get a lot quicker.
Yeah, I mean, there's too many cards that will be able to help it at the moment. You've got Winona, the supporter, which will be able to grab your free colorless Pokemon, including a Shaymin. You'll probably play Battle Compressors to get energy into the discard, which means you'll play Executes, which constantly go back and forth from discard pile to your bench. And then, of course, if your stadium goes. So it'll be quite easy. From what I've heard, it's quite normal to hit 150 turn 1. And anything above is a plus. So it's a scary thought.
And in the little testing that I've done with Rayquaza, it's incredibly easy, even once they've replaced Skyfield Stadium, to return a KO, even up to 240 damage, turn after turn after turn. It's a very consistent engine, and as Alex mentioned with Executes, stuff like that, you can always refill your bench, and you've always got the draw power of Shaymin, you've got the support of colourless Pokemon. It's just going to be a nuts deck. I think it's definitely the deck to beat in the upcoming Nationals.
Let's look at Shaymin then. So
this is unarguably the best card in the set, and will be the best card printed, I'd imagine, in the next couple of sets. Like, I don't think anything will ever rival this, because, again, another throwback to Uxie from Legends Awakened. It's even got the exact same ability, which is setup. You draw until you have 6 cards in your hand, not quite 7 from the before, but 6 is still a very good number. Has 110 HP, so it's bulkier than Jirachi, which is the same kind of utility that you're talking about. You're talking about consistency Pokemon EXs that you're going to be putting in your bench. Just a little bit of extra bulk goes a long way for these kind of Pokemon. It lets it survive a lot more. And I think the most annoying thing about this Pokemon is that it has an amazing attack. Along with all of these things that are going for it, it has an absolutely amazing attack, which for double colourless energy, so you can use it in any deck as long as you're running energies, do 30 damage and you go back to your hand, which may not seem like, oh, no, that's like 30 damage, that's not too bad, but A, you're getting your double colourless energy back, so the energies that you're putting on Shaymin isn't going to waste. B, you're doing 30 damage for free, basically, and you get to switch into something like a wall, maybe Wobbuffet, a Robo Substitute, just to stall for a turn. And C, you get, most importantly, you get the Shaming back in your hand, which lets you draw more cards later on next turn. And I think this card is unbelievable. It's
Apart from when you put Wobbuffet active.
just don't put it down, because don't expect your opponent to let you take it back up either. Like, if you're playing in a tournament like Nationals or Worlds, you have to be so careful with something like that, because people are playing for a lot of prizes, and you cannot expect your opponent to let you take something like that back up. So just be careful with it, but it's nuts, and you're going to want to get 3 or 4 of this card if possible.
It's ridiculous. Even I've tried it recently and just, being able to Ultra Ball for it.
Yeah.
We're obviously used to Ultra Ball for Jirachi, for Supporter, but Ultra Ball for Shaming, draw 6 cards, and now I'll also play a Supporter.
Exactly.
It's going to be awesome, I think. Alex, what do you reckon?
How excited are you?
Yay or nay?
I know. I wasn't able to play with or use Uxie in the older format, so I can't wait. I mean, I've always been a fan of trainer draw support. When I played Lugia to a couple of regional wins, having to play roller skates and stuff, and not really use a supporter for a turn. So having another Pokemon that could do it for me instead, it's gonna be cool. It's gonna be fun. A lot of fun, different ways of playing card decks now.
I think it's interesting that you said you're a fan of a trainer draw support, because I think that's the one thing that I really dislike, trainer support. I really like the fact that we're going back to Pokemon with this kind of consistency. We had it back in the day with Claydol, and now we had it with Uxie, and then we just lost it entirely. We had absolutely nothing for the longest time, and this is, I think, a real breath of fresh air that we're getting more Pokemon consistency, and hopefully it will negate some of the new draw trainers that we've been getting, such as Acrobike and stuff like that. So, which I'm personally a fan of.
It gives 3 different ways of sort of playing different decks now, right? So you've got supporters with Sycamore, I guess Birch's Observation, maybe even Shauna. And then Shaman using Pokemon, or I guess Jirachi may eventually be rotated alongside other cards. So then, the trainer support. So it'll bring a lot more different varieties and ways of thinking. I was watching a World Championship match earlier today, actually, whilst at work. Bad me, but there was roller skates and a Darkrai deck, which I didn't realize they were playing before. So it'll be fun to see how people build decks now. I mean,
your colleagues aren't watching this then, Alex, I guess.
Yeah, well, whether they know I play Pokemon or not is it's a different thing.
We've got some really cool item cards, trainer cards, supporters. Let's have a quick gander at them.
Yeah, so I think this is probably the one that's going to excite most people, the Mega Turbo. So it allows you to attach an energy, a basic energy from your discard pile to one of your Mega Pokemon. So throwback to Dark Patch, I guess, but this this allows you to attach it to any one of your Pokemon. Dark Patch allows you to attach Dark Energy to one of your bench Dark Pokemon. This can be active, can be anywhere you want it to be. It's great because Mega Pokemon are slow by nature. You have to evolve them, and we're not used to evolving Pokemon in a format where we've just had EXs for the longest time. So this can just speed up the process, and I think a lot of decks will benefit from this, and this will bring a lot of new Mega decks back into the format. And I think the interesting thing with this card is it's also going to bring Mega decks back that we haven't even looked at before. There's going to be you're going to have to go back and look through all your Megas again and see what can I pair this with, because there've been Megas that have just been unplayable because of how slow they are, but this kind of just gives it another dimension, gives it another way of speeding it up, and can most importantly keep Megas chaining themselves, because it's hard to get a Mega out, for it to die, and then to set up another Mega. But with this, you don't have to be so worried that your first Mega Pokemon's going to get knocked out, because just set up another one.
Crazy talk. We mentioned earlier with the Mega Rayquaza and the stadium support it gets.
Yeah.
Anything else to say about that stadium?
So we've talked a
I
bit
know,
about.
I know you had a bit of interest yesterday with how.
Oh yeah, there are interesting mechanics of this card, and I'm still not 100% sure how it works. I'm pretty sure I know how it works, but there is one interaction with Mega Groudon and Primal Groudon, where Primal Groudon knocks out this stadium basically, and we weren't sure whether you had to discard. Obviously, once the stadium goes, you have to discard your bench Pokemon until you have 5. And we weren't sure whether we had to discard the Pokemon before promoting a new active Pokemon, or if it was after. I assumed it was before, because I believe the game mechanic is you fulfill all effects of attacks, and then you promote the Pokemon at the end of that. So, I mean, it seems like a null point, but it's a difference of 30 damage at the end of the day, and it can make quite a big difference. But yeah, we'll talk more about the card, I guess. There's not much more to talk about it, but the obvious combination is the Mega Rayquaza. But there are other things in the format which benefit greatly from this. We're looking at Empoleon, Raichu, even Shiftry. So, and actually a Colress.
Oh.
So we could be getting some huge Colresses in tournaments coming up.
I know we have seen people high-fiving when they Juniper with no other cards to discard. I think it requires maybe a headbutt or a Teletubbies belly to belly if you're Colress for 16.
That would be interesting, James.
Yeah. I don't know how tournament organisers actually feel about us having to stand up, body slam into each other.
As long as you don't affect the team, I think that should be okay.
Can you imagine the finals?
If we're watching a stream one day and we see a Teletubby slam go on, very free.
I'm going to try it. Okay, let's have a look at the next card.
Cool. Trainer's Mail. It's well, we talked about Trainer Draw earlier. This is another form of that. Literally search the top 4 cards of your deck and pick any trainer card that you see there other than Trainer's Mail. Trainer card being supporter, item, or stadium, which is incredibly strong. And I think I can't see roller skates getting any more play. I think this outclasses roller skates in a big way. Like, the only thing roller skates will get you is an energy or a Pokemon, basically. This lets you get. This is so much more versatile. It's guaranteed, and basically any deck that used to play roller skates will now play this instead, I think.
Yeah, what do you reckon, Alex, on that?
It's a large consistency boost. That's the main thing, right? Being able to look at your top 4 of your cards, and pretty much the majority of your deck are trainer cards. So in comparison to Pokemon and Energy, so having that ability to look at your top 4 cards of your deck and just picking up the majority, like, at least half of it probably will be a trainer card. So you'll be able to pick up most things that you'd be after. It seems crazy. I mean, that together, you've so much item draw now. And again, as I said, as Tamao said, roller skates probably won't be as good anymore unless people really want to draw through the deck that quickly. But this seems sort of just boosts consistency. It'll make decks work a lot better than they should.
The only downside being more shuffling.
There is a lot more shuffling, yeah. I think, I mean, I'm sure some people out there would try a proper full-on speed engine where you literally use 4 bikes, 4 roller skates, 4 Trainer's Mail, 4 acro bikes, stuff like that. But because that would just be the full-on definition of a speed deck, you'd lose to Toad, obviously. But we've seen speed decks get a lot of popularity recently. Donphan's been very popular in the UK. I'm not sure how good that'll be with Toad and Rayquaza predicted to dominate the format, but it's not just limited to Donphan. Obviously, there's been a lot of decks that rely on a speed engine that we've seen do well. So it'll be interesting. I think it'll struggle to display. I don't think it's quite the same power level as Acrobike. It fills a different niche, but I think it will be played, definitely.
Okay, right. Support time.
Wally.
James's favourite.
Yeah.
I'm telling you guys, like, it's just gonna blow a hole in the game.
It's a diminutive little boy, but he has a pretty interesting ability, which, as a supporter, it's basically Evo Soda but stronger. It's you get to search your deck for an evolution card and play it on one of your Pokemon, even if it was played down that turn. So gives you access to the evolution trait that we talked about earlier. It's a bit slow right now, let's be honest. In this current format, it is a bit slow. There are uses for it, definitely. It's going to be... We're looking at stuff like Garbodor, Trevenant, even Shedinja we talked about earlier. There's a couple of uses for it, but at the moment it's too slow, but it's definitely got potential to do some interesting things in the future.
Maybe a cheeky one in bats, like speed bats.
I'm not sure. Would you?
Not really.
Would
You can
you-
only play the one, can't you?
Would
So-
you even get the damage from that? I'm not entirely sure. I think you might.
Is it from your hand?
I'm not sure whether Crobat's line is from your hand onto your Pokemon, or whether whenever it
Yeah.
comes in play. So
Yeah, that's a
it's
good
something
point.
you'd have to look at. But
I'm just quite happy they haven't broken this card completely. They've actually excluded EXs
yeah,
from it.
been very interesting if it allowed EXs though. I think
after the investment that they've put into the Spirit Links, it would be a shame, really.
true.
Except for it would mean you could use it on Mega Kangaskhan, Mega Charizard, Mega Venusaur, but hopefully they'll just reprint those. They'll print some Spirit Links.
Yeah, it's just
because
a
that would
shame.
be fun, wouldn't
It's
it?
just a shame that there's not a universal Spirit Link. I think that it's an issue really. Like every set, we're going to have like 2 or 3 Spirit Links now instead of other trainer cards that we could be getting.
Yeah.
Whereas they could have just printed one Spirit Link, and that would be universal for all Pokemon, and you would have actually playable Venusaur EXs and Blastoise EXs. But right now they are pretty much unplayable because you have to waste the turn evolving.
I think Mega Turbo changes that. It gives it the acceleration, half acceleration for Megas. I mean, you could just wall for a bit, right? It's what Primal Groudon does. You don't really need a Spirit Link for Primal Groudon because of a Mega Barrier, I suppose. But I don't know. Something to think about.
So yeah, penultimate card we'll talk about is Winona. We did talk about it briefly earlier, but it's a support card that allows you to search for 3 colours Pokemon, and I just dislike how much support colourless Pokemon's getting, because that is ridiculous. Like, it's not even limited to basic Pokemon. So we compare this card to something like Pokemon Fan Club, which lets you get 2 basic Pokemon, and then you look at Winona and you think, why would I ever play Fan Club? Like, I don't ever want to be playing Fan Club in any deck now that Rayquaza or any colourless deck gets access to Winona, because it's unbelievable that, especially with all the evolution traits that the colourless Pokemon are getting, it seems. So you can get the Rayquaza, the Spirit Link, and the Mega Rayquaza in one turn. You can get the Swablu Voltari, and you can just totally nullify your opponent's Lightning deck. It's an incredibly strong supporter. I expect to see 2-3 minimum in colourless decks. Definitely.
Do you approve, Alex?
it just synergizes so well with Rayquaza and decks, well, colorless decks in general. I mean, Pokemon Collector was something which was really big, or really quite heavily used for searching up and getting free basic Pokemon. And if your deck consists of colorless Pokemon anyway, you're basically getting Pokemon Collector back, which just seems ridiculous. I was a big fan of Fan Club. It was a cheap full art support card. I put it in my Florges deck, and that was the last time I ever used it. It's gone straight back into my binder now, but yeah, Winona looks like it's going to be used quite a lot. Ugh. Another supporter.
Okay, and we've got one special energy to have a look at.
Yeah, so the last card is Double Dragon Energy, which is pretty crazy. Just looking at it, it's pretty crazy. The applications of it aren't crazy yet, but it provides 2 energies of any energy type to a Dragon Pokemon. So think double colorless, think a million times better on Dragon Pokemon. It kind of negates the fact that the Dragon Pokemon have such awkward energy types. We see fire and water paired, metal and fighting paired on previous Pokemon. Like, Dragons always had these awkward energy pairings, and they've finally done something about it by bringing out a card like this. I'm just happy that Dragons aren't too overpowered. They've been careful with the power level of dragons, unlike the colourless Pokemon we're talking about. The power curve of dragon Pokemon right now is fairly low, so this will help dragon Pokemon do something in the format. I don't think dragon Pokemon will be redundant. I think that new Mega Rayquaza dragon type is potentially very powerful. So I actually think this card is quite good for the format. Like, it seems overpowered. It's just about right. I think it's exactly what dragon Pokemon needed.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Tamao.
I will raise one point.
Oh,
I'm gonna go all Luke Kirkham on you guys. I'm surprised you haven't actually included Jirachi from Rory Skies. I think it's a really cool niche card, but it has uses.
Okay, talk us through it.
So it's a 70 HP basic metal Jirachi. Its first attack is 1 metal. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck. Put 1 in your hand. Shuffle the other cards back in your deck, which is not great. Obviously, you don't really want to be wasting a turn on that. But its second attack is really interesting. It's called Doom Desire for a metal and a colorless. So you can partner this up with Mew and Dimensional Valley for 1 metal energy. Discard all energy attached to this Pokemon. The defending Pokemon is knocked out at the end of your opponent's next turn. Now, obviously, this is reset by things like Switch or just sort of retreating, paying a retreat cost, or Keldeo. But there's ways around it, and it seems like something can actually be done with Jirachi again. It's similar to talking about Shedinja. It's probably quite heavily based on Mew EX, and if that gets rotated, Jirachi needs 2 turns to be powered up just to discard all the energies again. But I guess you have Bronzong if you really want to keep chaining them, but it seems like something pretty cool that I think we'll see a couple of rogue decks, probably something like Luke Kirkham will suddenly come out with at a winner box or something silly like that. And then, I don't know, post it up on his blog, someone takes it, wins Nats, something Norm.
Sounds about right.
him complain for this.
When this card first got leaked, we did have a little laugh about it. Like, I think the initial thought was, oh, we could Dragalge and laser them, and they won't be able to retreat. They'd have to have a switch, and then you'd be able to use then you'd be able to use Jirachi's attack and actually get some mileage from it. But it was it's so much to fit in a deck.
Yeah, you do need a lot.
Countered by Keldeo, flat out countered by Keldeo, countered by Switch, countered by Floatstone. Oh, well, not if you've got Dragalge, but
just paying. Well, yeah, I guess paying retreat costs the same thing, but I don't know. It seems to
is the only way to make it work personally. And as soon as laser gets rotated out, it's almost impossible to get something like that to work. But what I will say is it's almost the biggest counter to Groudon, Mega Groudon EX, Prime Groudon, because they have a hefty retreat cost. They might play some switches, but
yeah, they won't play many, maybe 2.
Basically, paying 4 energy to knock out your little Jirachi at the end of the day as well. So it's actually, yeah, I agree with you. It's a semi-interesting card, but I don't.
I think of the rest of the cards in the set, it seems interesting. I like it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, it looks like we're going to be in for all kinds of entertainment, fun and games. I'll try again before I was cheekily interrupted by the craziness of Alex.
Apologies.
I've been James, he's been Tamao, he's been Alex. Thank you very much for visiting Pokemon TCG HQ. Check out some of our other videos, and we'll see you guys later.